The aliens mocked and humiliated humans relentlessly, until humanity unveiled our colossal war city, hidden in space, capable of smashing their entire fleet to atoms. Alien laughter echoed through the Indomitable's comms. Commander Nicholas Allen clenched his fists as Admiral Niran's sneering blue face filled the view screen. The Bajoran's armada of sleek silver warships loomed before the human fleet's patchwork vessels. Niran's teeth glinted as he smirked. Puny humans, your primitive junk heaps are laughable against our might. Yield now and kneel, and perhaps we shall make your extinction swift. Nicholas slammed a palm on the console. Stow it, Blueface. Humanity will fight to our last breath before bowing to Bajoran scum like you. Then prepare to breathe your last ape. Niran made a cutting motion and the feed died. Bajoran ships advanced, disruptors thrumming. Dread knotted Nicholas's gut. The human fleet was a minnow before a shark. His crew's ashen faces said it all. Humanity's end had come. No, he wouldn't let slimy Niran snuff out mankind's light. There was one hope, one final gambit. Milosh, send the codes. Activate Prometheus protocol. The comms officer nodded grimly and signaled deep space. Seconds dragged. Nothing. Then a gargantuan wormhole ripped reality asunder. A mammoth structure thundered forth, filling the void. Bristling cannons, crushing bulk, impenetrable armor. Prometheus Station had awoken. The war city's guns swiveled and locked on Bajoran ships. The aliens scrambled, stunned. Realization and fear shattered Niran's arrogant grin. Humanity's final weapon had been revealed. The Bajoran's hubris would be repaid in blood and fire. No longer would aliens laugh. It was mankind's turn to draw the galaxy's mirth. Prometheus Station blazed to life as its weapons locked onto the Bajoran armada. Searing beams of pure destructive energy pierced the void of space. Niran's eyes went wide as he saw the blinding light erupt from the human station. He shouted for evasive maneuvers, but it was too late. The beams sliced into ship after ship, vaporizing hulls and crews in an instant. Escape pods and debris showered out from the gaping holes left behind. Fighters poured out of the station's hangars, a massive swarm of nimble craft that descended on the reeling Bajoran force. The human pilots were well trained and coordinated. They danced around the enemy ships, peppering them with precision strikes. Nicholas punched his intercom. "All ships forward, pour it on!" The ragtag human fleet roared ahead, emboldened by the arrival of Prometheus. The Indomitable took point, plunging straight into the teeth of the enemy formation. Its cannons spoke, sending shells ripping into the Bajoran ships. The bridge shook as return fire pounded the hull. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles. Nicholas gripped the command chair, eyes narrowed at Niran's flagship. Shapes flitted past the viewports. Boarding craft. The pods slammed into the Indomitable's armor and started cutting their way in. Soldiers in heavy black armor crashed onto the bridge in a hail of splintered metal. Energy blasts filled the air. Nicholas drew his sidearm and fired, dropping one of the boarders. "Repel them!" he roared to the bridge crew as he vaulted from his chair. Deep in the bowels of Prometheus Station, the science team prepped humanity's ultimate weapon. Dr. Eliza Novak's hands flew over the controls of the graviton cannon. Alerts flashed across the screen. Alignment, power levels, containment fields, all green. "Prepare to fire on my mark." The cannon's barrel started to glow, pulsing with an eerie blue light. Raw power thrummed through the station's superstructure. Nicholas wrestled a hulking Bajoran trooper, slamming him against a bulkhead. The bridge was in chaos, a storm of flashing lights and zipping blaster bolts. He caught a glimpse of the view screen and Niran's flagship, just as a yawning black nothingness appeared in front of it. The graviton cannon, a miniature black hole, blossomed into being, sucking in everything around it. Bajoran ships crumpled like tin cans as the ravenous anomaly consumed them. It expanded rapidly, a swirling maelstrom of darkness. Niran pounded his console in rage and desperation. He stabbed a finger at Prometheus Station. "Ramming speed! Tear that station apart!" The remaining Bajoran ships lurched forward on a kamikaze run. Nicholas shoved the dead Bajoran off him and sprinted back to his chair. "Bring us about! Protect the station at all costs!" The Indomitable veered hard, engines roaring. It swung around to face the onrushing enemy head-on, a final line of defense. Every gun and missile port opened up, spitting streams of fire into the void. The Bajoran ships came on, heedless of the losses. This fight was far from over, and it would be brutal, but humanity would pay any price for survival. The Indomitable shuddered violently as the Bajoran ships hammered it with a ceaseless barrage. Warning alarms blared, and the acrid stench of burning circuitry filled the bridge. Nicholas gripped the armrests of his chair, knuckles white, as he watched the enemy ships growing larger on the view screen. There was no more time. It was now or never. He slapped the intercom. "All hands abandon ship. Get to the escape pods now." His XO commander Sarah Hawkins shot him a stricken look. "Sir, what about you?" "I'll stay and keep them occupied. Now go, that's an order." Tears in her eyes, she snapped a salute. "Yes, sir, it's been an honor." She turned on her heel and raced off the bridge, barking orders for the crew to evacuate. Nicholas worked the helm controls, plotting a collision course with Niran's flagship. The Indomitable groaned as he pushed its engines to the limit. The Bajoran ships loomed before him, filling the screen. He whispered a desperate prayer under his breath, begging for just a bit more time. Escape pods blasted away from the Indomitable's hull, spiraling towards the safety of Prometheus Station. Just a few more seconds. The proximity alarm screamed. The flagship was right on top of him. Nicholas braced for impact, ready to meet his fate head-on. Suddenly, a shimmering blue light engulfed him. His molecules tingled as the experimental transporter snatched him away at the last possible instant. The Indomitable, locked on its final course, smashed into Niran's ship in a blinding flash. A sun-bright explosion blossomed, vaporizing both vessels in a hellish inferno. On the flagship's bridge, Niran's eyes went wide as he saw the human ship fill his view screen. He opened his mouth to scream orders, but it was too late. Far too late. The Indomitable hit, and Niran's world became fire and searing, unimaginable pain, and then nothingness as he and his crew were atomized. Prometheus Station capitalized on the chaos, its graviton cannon firing repeatedly into the milling swarms of Bajoran ships. Miniature black holes winked into existence, ravenous gravity wells that sucked in the enemy vessels and crushed them into oblivion. Bereft of their leader, and caught in a deadly crossfire between the human fleet and the station, the Bajoran lines crumbled. Ships peeled away in full retreat, fleeing for the safety of hyperspace. The humans let them go, too battered and spent to give chase. In the aftermath, the human ships limped back to Prometheus, their hulls scored and blackened. Medics hurried to tend to the wounded as damage control teams rushed to put out fires and seal breaches. The cost had been high, but they had won. The Bajoran armada was no more. A flash of blue light heralded a new arrival on the station's bridge. Nicholas appeared, his uniform torn and blood-stained but gloriously alive. Stunned silence reigned for a moment before the crew erupted in cheers. Nicholas raised his hands for quiet. "We did it. We showed those Bajoran bastards what humanity is made of. But this is just the beginning. They'll be back, and we need to be ready. But for today, we celebrate. And we remember the brave men and women who gave their lives to make this victory possible." As the implications sunk in, the crew knew that everything had changed. The Bajorans had been humbled and the galaxy had been put on notice. Humanity was rising, and no one could afford to underestimate them again. Nicholas, the hero of the hour, already had his eyes on the future, planning for the next fight. Because war was coming, and this was just the first battle in a long and bloody struggle for survival. As the dust settled, and the adrenaline of battle faded, Nicholas turned his attention to the secrets hidden within Prometheus Station. He assembled a team of his most trusted officers and set out to explore the vast, echoing chambers of the ancient structure. Their footsteps rang out on the metal floors as they delved deeper into the station's heart. Shadows danced in the flickering light of their torches. Suddenly, They came upon a massive sealed door, its surface etched with strange symbols. Nicholas ran his fingers over the markings, his brow furrowed in concentration. "These look like some sort of access code," he muttered. "Milosh, see if you can crack it." The tech expert stepped forward, his fingers flying over a control panel. With a hiss of releasing pressure, the door slid open, revealing a cavernous room filled with rows upon rows of stasis pods. A soft, pulsing glow emanated from each one, casting an eerie blue light over the space. Nicholas approached the nearest pod, wiping away a layer of dust from its surface. Inside he could see the face of a young man, his features perfectly preserved in suspended animation. "My God," Nicholas breathed, "there must be hundreds of them." As they explored further, they discovered a terminal that held the answers they sought. These were no ordinary humans, but genetically enhanced super soldiers, created as part of a top-secret project codenamed Phoenix Rising. Designed to be the ultimate defenders of humanity, they possessed strength, speed, and intelligence far beyond any normal human. Nicholas knew immediately that these soldiers could be the key to turning the tide against the Bajorans. He gave the order to begin the awakening process, watching as the pods hissed open one by one and the super soldiers emerged, blinking in the sudden light. They were quickly outfitted with armor and weapons from Prometheus Station's vast armory, and began to integrate into the ranks of the human fleet. In training exercises and simulated battles, their prowess was immediately apparent. They moved with blinding speed, their reflexes honed to a razor's edge, and their tactical thinking was second to none. Meanwhile, in the depths of Bajoran space, a very different scene was unfolding. On the bridge of the battleship Carvaxis, Kareth brooded in the command chair that had once belonged to Neron. His eyes smoldered with barely contained rage as he watched the footage of the battle at Prometheus Station for the 100th time. "Neron was a fool," he snarled. "He underestimated the humans and paid the price for his arrogance, but I will not make the same mistake." He turned to his assembled officers, his voice hard as steel. "We will crush the humans no matter the cost. I want every ship, every soldier, every weapon at our disposal ready for the coming battle." His gaze swept over them, his eyes glinting with malice. "And send word to our allies, the Krill, the Zentari, the Vorlons. They have all suffered at the hands of the humans. Now is the time for them to join us and wipe this scourge from the galaxy once and for all." Back at Prometheus Station, an urgent transmission came through on a secure channel. Nicholas rushed to the command deck, his heart pounding as he read the intel reports. The Bajorans were massing for a massive attack, targeting not just Prometheus, but key human colonies and outposts across the galaxy. He slammed his fist against the console, his jaw clenched with grim determination. They had to act fast, had to strike before the Bajorans could bring their full might to bear. And he knew just how to do it. Nicholas strode into the armory where the Phoenix Rising soldiers were gearing up, his eyes blazing with fierce resolve. "Soldiers, I have a mission for you, a mission that could decide the fate of humanity itself." He brought up a holographic display of Bajoran space, marking out key strategic points. "We're going to take the fight to the heart of the Bajoran Empire. We're going to hit them hard and fast, cripple their ability to make war. With your abilities and the advanced tech of this station, we have a chance to end this, once and for all." The super soldiers listened intently, their eyes gleaming with the prospect of battle. They had been created for this very purpose, and now, under Nicholas's leadership, they would fulfill their destiny. As the preparations for the mission began in earnest, a sense of electric anticipation filled the station. This was it, the moment of truth. The future of humanity would be decided in the coming battle, among the stars of a hostile galaxy, and Nicholas would lead them to victory or die trying. Nicholas stared at the Bajoran defector, his mind racing. Raxar's claim about the Doomsday device, an alien artifact powerful enough to annihilate entire star systems, chilled him to the bone. If Kareth got his hands on such a weapon. "You're certain of this?" Nicholas asked, his voice tight. Raxar nodded, his eyes haunted. I've seen the device with my own eyes. Kareth keeps it in a secure chamber aboard his flagship. He plans to use it to eradicate Earth and cripple humanity. Nicholas clenched his fists, a cold rage building inside him. He couldn't let that happen, he wouldn't. What do you propose? I can get you aboard Kareth's ship, Raxar said. I know the security codes, the layout, but I need your word that my family will be safe. Nicholas hesitated only a moment before nodding. You have it, we'll protect them. With the deal struck, Nicholas assembled his team. A hand-picked group of Phoenix Rising super soldiers, each one honed to peak physical and mental perfection. They were the best of the best, and he would need every one of them for this mission. Using Raxar's intel and advanced stealth tech from Prometheus Station, they slipped aboard Kareth's flagship like ghosts. The Bajoran ship was a maze of dimly lit corridors and humming machinery, but Raxar guided them through, his knowledge of the vessel proving invaluable. They split into two teams, one led by Nicholas to secure the Doomsday device, the other tasked with sabotaging key systems and creating a diversion. As Nicholas and his soldiers crept through the bowels of the ship, they encountered Bajoran patrols at every turn. The corridors erupted into chaos as the super soldiers engaged the Bajorans in brutal close-quarters combat. Enhanced muscles rippled beneath skin-tight battle armor as they fought, their movements a blur of speed and precision. Bajoran energy blasts sizzled through the air, but the super soldiers evaded them with uncanny agility, closing in to deliver crushing blows. Bones snapped, armor shattered. Bajorans fell before the onslaught, no match for the sheer physical superiority of the Phoenix Rising warriors. Nicholas fought alongside his soldiers, his own augmented body a weapon honed to deadly perfection. He moved like liquid lightning, striking with ruthless efficiency. As the battle raged, a series of dull thumps echoed through the ship, the sabotage team's explosives detonating, wreaking havoc on the vessel's critical systems. Warning klaxons blared as the lights flickered and died, plunging the corridors into darkness. Nicholas and his team pushed forward through the smoke and confusion, drawing ever closer to their target. But as they reached the chamber housing the Doomsday device, a figure emerged from the shadows. Kareth, his eyes glinting with malice and hatred. He was clad in an advanced battlesuit, bristling with weapons and armor. "Did you really think it would be so easy, human?" Kareth sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. Nicholas raised his weapon, his muscles coiled and ready. "Stand aside, Kareth, you can't win this." Kareth laughed, a cold and hollow sound. "Oh, but I already have." He lunged forward, his suit's enhanced servos propelling him at blinding speed. Nicholas met him head-on, and the chamber dissolved into a whirlwind of clashing metal and searing energy beams as the two leaders dueled. The ship bucked and shuddered as the sabotage team's explosives continued to detonate, tearing through hull and bulkhead. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks, and the deck tilted crazily beneath their feet. But Nicholas and Kareth fought on, locked in a deadly embrace, each determined to end the other. Nicholas ducked under a vicious swipe of Kareth's energy blade, the searing heat of it singeing his hair. He retaliated with a lightning-fast series of blows, his armored fists hammering into Kareth's suit with enough force to dent metal. Kareth staggered but didn't fall, his suit systems compensating for the damage. The Bajoran leader lashed out with a kick that caught Nicholas in the chest, sending him flying back into a bulkhead. The impact drove the breath from his lungs, but he surged back to his feet, refusing to yield. He couldn't fail, not now, not with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. The chamber shook violently as another explosion ripped through the ship, closer this time. The sabotage team was still at work, fighting their way through the Bajoran crew to complete their mission. Nicholas knew he had to end this, and fast. He activated his suit's overdrive, feeling the rush of power surge through his limbs. His movements became a blur, his strikes too fast for the eye to follow. He rained down blows on Kareth, the Bajoran's armor cracking and splintering under the relentless assault. Kareth roared in fury and pain, his own attacks becoming desperate and erratic. He lunged forward in a final, reckless charge, his energy blade slashing towards Nicholas's throat. Nicholas ducked under Kareth's energy blade, the searing heat missing his face by inches. Seizing the moment, he lunged for the Doomsday device, his fingers closing around the alien artifact. But as he pulled it from its housing, Kareth slammed into him, sending them both tumbling to the deck. They grappled furiously, rolling across the floor in a tangle of limbs and armor. Nicholas felt Kareth's hands close around his throat, squeezing with crushing force. Black spots danced in his vision as he struggled for air. Suddenly a blur of motion caught his eye. Raxar, his Bajoran ally, leapt into the fray, tackling Kareth and breaking his grip on Nicholas's throat. The two Bajorans fought savagely, trading blows that would have shattered human bones. Nicholas staggered to his feet, clutching the Doomsday device to his chest. Around him the super soldiers battled on, holding back the tide of Bajoran reinforcements pouring into the chamber. A sharp cry pierced the chaos. Nicholas whirled to see Raxar stumble back, a glowing energy blade buried in his chest. Kareth loomed over him, eyes blazing with triumph. "Raxar!" Nicholas shouted, surging forward, but it was too late. Raxar crumpled to the deck, his lifeblood pooling beneath him. With the last of his strength, he met Nicholas's gaze and gasped, "Go! Take the device! Save your people!" Tears stinging his eyes, Nicholas nodded. He turned to his soldiers and barked, "Fall back, we have what we came for." They fought their way back to the stealth ship, energy beams sizzling past them, and explosions rocking the flagship's corridors. Nicholas clutched the Doomsday device like a lifeline, Raxar's final words echoing in his mind. They barely made it aboard before the flagship tore itself apart, consumed by the sabotage team's handiwork. The stealth ship rocketed away, riding the shockwave to safety. In the aftermath, a somber mood gripped Prometheus Station. Nicholas delivered the grim news of Raxar's sacrifice, his voice heavy with grief and anger. But there was little time to mourn. The Doomsday device demanded their full attention. The station's top scientists pored over the alien artifact, probing its secrets with every tool and technique at their disposal. Days turned into weeks as they worked tirelessly to unravel its mysteries. Whispers began to spread through the human fleet, whispers of hope, of a weapon that could finally tip the scales in their favor. Allied species, long cowed by Bajoran aggression, began to rally to humanity's cause. But even as their strength grew, so too did the specter of Kareth's vengeance. Reports flooded in of a massive Bajoran armada massing on the frontier, a swarm of ships that blotted out the stars. At its head was a monstrous new flagship, bristling with weapons and shielded in impenetrable armor. Nicholas stood on Prometheus Station's observation deck, staring out at the gathering storm. The Doomsday device weighed heavily in his hands, a burden and a promise all in one. He knew that the coming battle would be the crucible in which humanity's fate was forged, that every resource, every strategy, every sacrifice would be put to the ultimate test. But he also knew that he would not face this challenge alone. The Phoenix Rising soldiers stood ready, an army of heroes forged in the fires of war, and beyond them, a galaxy of allies and friends, bound together by a common cause. Come what may, they would face the Bajoran threat as one, and with the power of the Doomsday device at their command, they would see humanity's destiny written across the stars. Nicholas turned from the viewport, his jaw set with grim determination. There was work to be done, and time was running out. The fate of his species hung by a thread, and he would not let it be cut short, not while he still drew breath, not while humanity still had hope. Nicholas clenched his jaw as the desperate distress call from the human colony crackled through the comm. Bajoran warships swarmed the planet, disruptor cannons hammering its defenses. The colony was on the verge of falling. He turned to Captain Sarah Reeves, his second-in-command. "Take the Fifth Fleet. Get our people off that rock, whatever it takes." Reeves nodded grimly. "We'll give those blue bastards hell, sir." As Reeves mustered the fleet, Nicholas strode into Prometheus Station's research labs. Scientists hunched over consoles, studying the doomsday device with fevered intensity. Dr. Novak looked up, her eyes shadowed. "We're close, Commander, so close, but we need more data to create a counterweapon." Nicholas leaned in. "What do you need?" "Dark matter. It powers the device. If we can get enough—" "I'll get it. Assemble a team." Hours later, Reeves's fleet dropped out of warp at the besieged colony. Bajoran ships wheeled to face them, weapons hot. "All ships engage," Reeves barked. "Fighters, clear a path for the transports." The void lit up with searing energy beams and missile contrails. Human and Bajoran ships dueled in a vicious dance, hulls buckling under brutal broadsides. On the planet, human Marines and Phoenix Rising soldiers fought side by side, repelling Bajoran shock troops. Powered armor clashed, energy blades sizzling. Civilians huddled in bunkers as the battle raged overhead. Sergeant Hawkins rallied his Marines, leading a charge to break the Bajoran lines. "Push forward, buy time for the evac." In space, Reeves's flagship shuddered as Bajoran fire pounded its shields. Damage reports flooded in, but she held her course, covering the transports. Slowly, surely, the human forces turned the tide. Transports lifted off, ferrying civilians to safety. The Bajorans fell back, bloodied but not broken. Light years away, Nicholas guided his dark matter harvester into the roiling depths of the Erebus Nebula. Tendrils of exotic matter danced across the hull, drawn to the collector arrays. Suddenly, a barrage of disruptor fire slammed into the harvester's shields. Bajoran attack ships, sleek and deadly, emerged from the nebula's murk. "Ambush!" Nicholas snarled. "Evasive pattern delta." The harvester jinked and wove, its pilot desperately trying to evade the Bajoran's fire. Phoenix Rising soldiers rushed to man the ship's meager defenses. In the chaos, the harvester plunged deeper into the nebula. Warning klaxons blared as the hull groaned under the stress of gravitational shear. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Bajoran boarders, clad in void-black armor, materialized on the bridge. Phoenix Rising troops leapt to meet them, the close confines erupting into a brutal melee. Nicholas grappled with a hulking Bajoran trooper, his enhanced muscles straining. He drove a knee into the trooper's gut and hurled him into a bulkhead with bone-crushing force. The dark matter levels climbed as the harvester's tanks filled, but the ship was coming apart, battered by the nebula's fury and the Bajoran onslaught. "Collector arrays are overloading," the pilot shouted over the din of battle. "We have to go now." Nicholas fired his sidearm, dropping the last Bajoran boarder. "Get us out of here." The harvester, leaking atmosphere and trailing debris, clawed its way out of the nebula. The Bajoran ships, caught in the gravitational maelstrom, were dragged screaming into the abyss. In the aftermath, Nicholas took stock of the damage. The dark matter had been secured, but at a terrible cost. Good soldiers, irreplaceable friends, had been lost. As the harvester limped back to Prometheus Station, he clutched the canister of dark matter like a talisman. This was the key. This would be the Bajorans' undoing. No matter the price, humanity would prevail. As the shadow of hope docked at Prometheus Station, Nicholas and his team hurried out, the canister of precious dark matter clutched tightly in their hands. Dr. Novak and her fellow scientists descended upon them in a flurry of activity, ushering the group towards the central lab. Inside, the cavernous space hummed with energy, as engineers and technicians worked feverishly to integrate the dark matter into the anti-doomsday weapon. Nicholas stood at the center of the maelstrom, barking orders and coordinating efforts. Suddenly, warning klaxons blared throughout the station. "Bajoran ships incoming," a voice crackled over the intercom. "They're launching fighters and boarding craft." Nicholas cursed under his breath. Kareth had found them. He jabbed a finger at the scientists. "Keep working. No matter what, that weapon must be completed." He sprinted out of the lab, his boots pounding on the metal deck plates. Around him, Prometheus Station shuddered as the first wave of Bajoran fire slammed into its shields. In the hangar bays, Phoenix Rising super soldiers and elite marine units rushed to their battle stations. power armor humming, and weapons primed. Nicholas burst into the command center, a hive of frantic activity. "Status report," he barked. "Shields holding for now, sir," a technician replied, her fingers flying over a console. "But they're hitting us hard. Estimate breach in outer perimeter in minutes." Nicholas gritted his teeth. "Deploy all ground forces. We hold the line, no matter the cost." The command center rocked as another salvo of Bajoran fire struck home. Damage reports flooded in. Hull breaches, power fluctuations, casualties mounting. On the station's surface, the battle raged. Human defenders clashed with Bajoran shock troops in a brutal melee of flashing energy blades and screaming plasma fire. Power-armored Marines stomped forward, shoulder to shoulder, pouring streams of blistering weapons fire into the advancing Bajoran lines. Phoenix Rising soldiers moved like quicksilver wraiths amid the chaos, their enhanced reflexes and strength making them lethal beyond measure. They struck from the shadows, felling Bajorans with precise blows and bursts of fire. But for every invader that fell, more surged forward, heedless of loss. They clambered over the bodies of their fallen comrades, hurling themselves at the human defenses with fanatical zeal. In the command center, Nicholas watched the tactical displays with a grim eye. The Bajorans were paying a heavy toll, but through sheer numbers and relentless determination, they were grinding down humanity's defenders. Suddenly, a priority alert flashed on the screen. "Intruder alert," a synthetic voice chimed. "Unauthorized access detected in Sector 7G, Level 42. The Central Lab." Nicholas felt his blood run cold. Infiltrators. Karath's last desperate gambit to stop the anti-doomsday weapon. He spun on his heel, already running. "Lieutenant, you have the con. Hold the line." He charged through the embattled corridors of Prometheus Station, a hand-picked team of Phoenix Rising operatives falling into step behind him. They moved with the fluid precision of a well-oiled machine, bounding over debris and fallen bodies, weapons sweeping for threats. The Central Lab's blast doors loomed before them, ominously shut. Nicholas slapped the access panel, cursing as the display flashed red. Locked down, he turned to his team. "Breaching charges, now." Shaped explosives were slapped onto the reinforced metal. The operatives ducked back, shielding their faces. A thunderous detonation shook the corridor, and the blast doors buckled inward, torn off their tracks. Nicholas and his team stormed into the smoke-filled lab, weapons leveled. Flashes of weapons fire strobed through the haze, the acrid scent of ozone thick in the air. Dark shapes flitted among the banks of machinery, the Bajoran infiltrators. "Fan out," Nicholas roared. "Secure the weapon." The Phoenix Rising operatives split into pairs, moving through the lab with practiced efficiency. They swept around corners and vaulted over consoles, hunting the infiltrators with relentless determination. Nicholas spotted a Bajoran agent crouched behind a power relay, a glowing plasma charge clutched in his fist. The operative was seconds away from planting the explosive, seconds away from turning the anti-doomsday weapon into a pile of molten slag. Nicholas lunged, a guttural battle cry tearing from his throat. He slammed into the Bajoran, the two of them tumbling to the deck in a tangle of limbs. The plasma charge skittered away, spinning into the shadows. They grappled furiously, enhanced muscles straining against each other. The Bajoran snarled, his eyes feverish with hatred, his hands locked around Nicholas's throat, squeezing with crushing force. Nicholas jackknifed his body, throwing the Bajoran off him. He scrambled to his feet, snatching up a discarded pulse rifle. The Bajoran leapt at him, a wicked energy blade hissing to life in his fist. Nicholas fired from the hip, the rifle bucking in his hands. A burst of searing blue bolts caught the Bajoran in the chest, burning through armor and flesh. The infiltrator crumpled, his blade clattering to the deck. Around the lab, the sounds of combat faded as the Phoenix Rising operatives methodically neutralized the remaining infiltrators. Nicholas staggered to the central control console, his eyes darting over the readouts. The anti-doomsday weapon was intact, The dark matter integration was still in progress. They still had a chance. And then the world shook. A deafening boom split the air, and the deck heaved beneath Nicholas's feet. He clung to the console, fighting to keep his balance as equipment crashed to the floor around him. "Report!" he shouted into his comm. "What the hell was that?" "Here's Kareth," the lieutenant's voice crackled back, laced with static. "His flagship, it just rammed the station, tore right through the outer hull." Nicholas felt his stomach lurch. Kareth's final gambit, a last-ditch effort to stop the weapon no matter the cost. The damage readout scrolled across the screen. Hull breaches, catastrophic power failures, whole sections of the station exposed to the vacuum. They were hemorrhaging air and power. He slapped the console. "All hands, abandon station. Get to the evac shuttles now." In the lab, warning lights flashed and klaxons blared. The scientists scrambled, snatching up data drives and prototype components. Dr. Novak shot Nicholas a desperate look. "The weapon! It's not ready. We need more time." Nicholas shook his head grimly. "No time. We finish it on the Shadow of Hope. Move!" They ran, racing through the disintegrating corridors of Prometheus Station. Bulkheads groaned and buckled, sparks cascading from ruptured conduits. Evacuation alarms blared, urging the station's beleaguered defenders to flee. In the hangar bay, the Shadow of Hope waited, its sleek black hull unmarred by the chaos. Nicholas and the scientists piled aboard, dragging the anti-doomsday components with them. As the frigate tore free of the station's embrace, Prometheus shuddered its last. Explosions rippled across its surface, great gouts of flame and debris hurled into the void. The once proud bastion of humanity's resistance crumbled, consumed by Karath's spite. But the Shadow of Hope flew on, a sliver of defiance streaking into the stars. On its bridge, Nicholas watched the fleet tactical displays with hard eyes. Captain Reeves and her battle-worn ships had returned, the last survivors of humanity's shattered armada. "All ships, form up on the Shadow of Hope," Nicholas ordered, his voice iron. "We're taking the fight to Kareth. We're ending this once and for all." The fleet gathered, the wounded ships linking up with grim determination. At its head, the Shadow of Hope accelerated, the precious dark matter weapon nestled in its heart. One final charge, one last desperate gambit. The fate of humanity would be decided in the fires of the coming battle. And Nicholas would lead them into that crucible, no matter the cost. The Shadow of Hope knifed through the void, its sleek black hull wrapped in the shimmering cloak of advanced stealth technology. On the bridge, Nicholas and his crew worked feverishly to prepare the dark matter weapon for deployment. Dr. Novak's fingers flew over the console, her brow furrowed in concentration. Suddenly she slammed a fist against the panel, a curse escaping her lips. "The targeting system is fried. We can't lock onto the Doomsday device's energy signature." Nicholas leaned over her shoulder, his eyes scanning the readouts. The damage from the infiltrator attack on Prometheus Station had been more severe than they'd realized. He straightened, his jaw set with grim determination. There was only one option left. "Transfer the weapon to my fighter. I'll pilot it in manually and take the shot myself." His crew exchanged worried glances, but they knew better than to argue. They had all seen the steel in Nicholas's eyes before, the unwavering resolve that had carried them through countless battles. In the hangar bay, Nicholas strapped himself into the cockpit of his one-man fighter. The dark matter weapon nestled in the craft's belly. He ran his hands over the controls, feeling the hum of the engines beneath him. Over the comm, Captain Reeves's voice crackled. "We're ready, Commander. The fleet is in position. We'll keep those bastards off your back." Nicholas nodded, his grip tightening on the joystick. "Understood. Drop the cloak and engage the enemy. Draw their fire away from me." With a final salute to his crew, Nicholas sealed his cockpit and rocketed out of the Shadow of Hope's hangar bay. The Bajoran fleet loomed before him, a swarm of silver ships bristling with weapons. The Shadow of Hope shimmered into view, its cloak falling away as it opened fire on the Bajoran armada. Energy beams and missiles crisscrossed the void as the human fleet joined the fray, tearing into the enemy ships with ruthless precision. In the midst of the chaos, Nicholas's fighter darted and weaved, his reflexes honed by years of combat. He jinked and rolled, narrowly evading the streams of weapons fire that lanced past his cockpit. The comm crackled with the chatter of his squad mates as they fought to clear a path for him. Explosions bloomed in the darkness, the remnants of destroyed ships tumbling past in a macabre ballet. Nicholas gritted his teeth, his eyes locked on his target. Kareth's flagship loomed ahead, a monstrous silhouette against the stars. The Doomsday device glowed within its hull, a pulsing heart of malevolent energy. His finger tightened on the trigger, ready to unleash the dark matter weapon and end this once and for all. But just as he was about to fire, Kareth's ship unleashed a hurricane of weapons fire. Nicholas's fighter shuddered as the barrage slammed into his shields, warnings screaming across his displays. The dark matter weapon's power readings fluctuated wildly, the systems damaged by the onslaught. He fought to keep the ship steady, his knuckles white on the controls. But it was no use. The fighter was coming apart around him, the hull groaning under the strain. The weapon's containment field was failing, the dark matter threatening to break free and consume everything in a cataclysmic release of energy. In that moment, Nicholas knew what he had to do. The only thing he could do. With a final, resolute breath, he opened a channel to the shadow of hope. "This is Commander Nicholas Allen. It's been an honor serving with you all. Keep fighting. Keep humanity's light burning in the stars." He severed the link before they could respond, before they could try to talk him out of what needed to be done. Nicholas firewalled the throttle, his fighter leaping forward on a final, desperate charge. Kareth's flagship filled his viewport, the Doomsday device pulsing at its heart. Nicholas felt a strange calm settle over him as he plunged towards his destiny. A small smile tugged at his lips. "Let's finish this." With a defiant roar, he rammed his stricken fighter into the heart of Kareth's ship, directly into the Doomsday device itself. The dark matter weapon detonated on impact, a blinding flash of energy engulfing both ships in an instant of searing, absolute destruction. The shockwave ripped through the Bajoran fleet like the hand of an angry god. Ships shattered and spun away, trailing debris and gouts of flame. The once proud armada was left crippled and broken, reeling from the blow. On the shadow of Hope's Bridge, the crew watched in stunned silence as the explosion's afterglow faded. Tears streamed down their faces, shock and grief etched in every line. Their commander, their friend, was gone. But his sacrifice had not been in vain. The tide had turned. The Bajorans were in retreat, their fleet in shambles and their Doomsday weapon destroyed. It was a victory, even if it tasted of ashes in their mouths. Captain Reeves straightened in her chair, her eyes hard as flint. Nicholas's final order echoed in her mind. Keep fighting, keep humanity's light burning. She would honor that. They all would. All ships, press the attack. Let's send these bastards back to the hell they came from. The human fleet surged forward, their weapons blazing with renewed fury. The Bajorans, leaderless and demoralized, could only flee before the onslaught. The battle raged on, the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. The shadow of Hope's Bridge was a cacophony of alarms and shouting. As the ship limped away from the dying wreckage of Kareth's flagship, Captain Reeves gripped the armrests of her chair, her knuckles white as she barked orders. Damage report. Hull breaches on decks 5 and 7. Shields are down to 20%. Casualty reports coming in from all decks. Medical bays are overwhelmed. Reeves gritted her teeth. The cost had been high, but they had done it. The Doomsday device was destroyed and the Bajoran fleet was in shambles. But where was Nicholas? Scan the wreckage for escape pods or life signs, she commanded. Find the commander. Minutes crawled by as the sensors probed the debris field. Then a shout from the ops station. Captain, we've got him. A faint life sign in the wreckage. Reeves shot to her feet. Get a rescue shuttle out there now. In the twisted remains of Nicholas's fighter, wedged between the shattered hulls of the two ships, Nicholas hung limp in his restraints. Blood bubbled from his mouth with each shallow breath. His vision swam, darkness encroaching. Suddenly, light pierced the shadows. Hands reached for him, pulling him free. He felt himself being carried, voices shouting orders he couldn't understand. Then, nothing. He woke to the sterile white of a medical bay, his body a lattice of pain. Every breath was agony. He tried to move, but found himself restrained. A face swam into view above him, Dr. Novak, her expression pinched with worry. "Don't try to move," she said softly. "You're safe now, but your injuries are severe. It's a miracle you survived at all." Nicholas tried to speak, but could only manage a hoarse whisper. "The station! The fleet!" Prometheus Station is heavily damaged, but intact. The fleet took heavy losses, but the Bajorans have been routed. You did it, Nicholas. You saved us all. Tears stung his eyes. The cost had been so high, so many lives lost, but they had won. Humanity would survive. As he drifted back into the embrace of painkillers and sedatives, he heard Dr. Novak's voice, as if from a great distance. "Rest now, Commander. You've earned it. We'll take it from here." In the days and weeks that followed, as Nicholas drifted in and out of consciousness, the human fleet began the arduous process of rebuilding. Ships limped back to dry docks for repairs, while salvage crews picked through the wreckage of Prometheus Station, recovering what they could. The Phoenix Rising soldiers, those who had survived, took up the mantle of leadership in Nicholas's absence. They oversaw the reconstruction efforts, coordinated with allied species, and planned for the future defense of humanity. It was a future that looked brighter than it had in decades. The Bajoran threat had been crushed, at least for now, and humanity had proven itself a force to be reckoned with. But they knew their work was far from over. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and there would always be new threats on the horizon. For Nicholas, recovery was a slow and painful process. The injuries he had sustained were unlike anything the doctors had seen before, a result of the dark matter weapon's exotic energies. They had to rebuild parts of his body from the ground up, using experimental treatments and cybernetic augmentations. But through it all, his friends and comrades were there for him. They visited him in the hospital, brought him news of the outside world, and reminded him of what he was fighting for. They were his strength when he had none, his light in the darkness. And so, bit by bit, he healed. Scars faded, bones knitted, and strength returned to atrophied muscles. The day he finally walked out of the hospital under his own power, a cheer went up from the assembled crowd. He was a hero, a symbol of humanity's indomitable will. But Nicholas knew the truth. He was just a man, a soldier who had done his duty, and that duty was not yet done. The leaders of the human resistance came to him then, in the quiet of his recovery room. They spoke of honors and accolades, of medals and commendations. But Nicholas waved them away. He had not fought for glory or praise. But then they told him of something else, something that made his heart race with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. They had found something in the data recovered from Prometheus Station, a secret that had been hidden for centuries. Alien ruins, scattered across the galaxy like breadcrumbs leading to a greater truth. Ruins that held the promise of technology and knowledge beyond anything humanity had ever known. It was a discovery that could change everything, for better or for worse. And they wanted Nicholas to lead the expedition to find them. He stared out the window, at the stars that had been his home for so long. So much sacrificed, so much still to do. Could he walk away from it all? Could he rest, knowing that there were still battles to be fought, still secrets to uncover? In the end, there was only one answer he could give, only one path he could take. He met their eyes and nodded. "I'll do it." The preparations began in earnest. A ship was readied, a crew assembled. Scientists and soldiers, the best and brightest that humanity had to offer. They would follow Nicholas to the ends of the universe if he asked. And he would ask, because he knew deep in his bones that this was the key to everything, the key to humanity's future, to its place among the stars. As he stood on the bridge of the ship that would take them to the first set of coordinates, he felt a sense of profound purpose settle over him, the weight of responsibility, of the lives that depended on him, on the choices he would make. But he also felt a sense of hope, of possibility, a sense that despite all the pain and loss, all the sacrifice and suffering, humanity was on the cusp of something great, something wondrous. He turned to his crew, his friends, his family. They looked to him expectantly, waiting for the word. He smiled, and it was a smile that held the promise of a new dawn. Let's begin. If you finish this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.